Fed Chair Powell set to testify in front of the Senate Banking Committee just a little more than an hour. Join us now to talk about what's on the agenda and also the presidential race. South Carolina Republican Senator Tim Scott. I hope you had some coffee, Senator. Hopefully he's a ranking member on the Banking Committee. And his name, you obviously have heard this, been floated as a potential VP pick for Donald Trump. There's nothing you could do that would get you more high-profile attention than being on Squawk Box, Senator. So this is smart. Welcome.
Well, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us again.
Well, thanks for helping me with my getting attention on Squawk Box.
Anything we can.
Powerful show. I watch as a business guy. So thank you.
Right. Anything we can do. Just all you got to do is call. So he's going to come on. It's kind of interesting, isn't it, that he's going to probably cut rates in September. Is that too late to actually help whomever the and we'll talk about that, but whether it's President Biden or whoever the nominee is, rates seem like they're going to come down right before the election.
Yeah, there's no doubt that Joe Biden broke this economy, and Jay Powell is trying to figure out how to fix the economy. Listen, over the last 3.5 years, what we've seen is a loss of spending power by the average American around $28,000. Rate cuts will be helpful, but the fact of the matter is that doing it in September looks pretty political. I had a conversation with Jay Powell yesterday, and one of the things I left with is that he sees inflation coming down, so the prospect of rate cuts, I think, are going up. But the bottom line is this: if you do it in September and not in July, I think there's going to be a lot of conversations around the political nature of rate cuts. More importantly, though, we have to figure out how to keep this economy thriving for the first-time home buyers. How do we keep single moms like the one that raised me being able to afford buying food 30% higher, putting gas in the car about 45 to 50% higher? Those are the issues that I will talk to Jay Powell about as we have a hearing in about an hour.
Yep, and I was having that conversation just yesterday with my son. Actually, he's like, "Well, the economy, blah blah," and I go, "Scotty, oh, his name's Scott, Senator Scott. Scotty, if you have less money every 2 weeks at the end of your paycheck, and you're a mother, and you're saying, 'No, I'm sorry, we're not getting that this time,' or yes. If you're waiting for a paycheck and you have less every couple of weeks than you had before, it's just that simple. There's just no way to dress that up. There's not enough lipstick to put on that to help people."
100%. Listen, we went 52 paychecks in a row where inflation outpaced wage growth. Recovering from that is a long-term prospect. The challenge, of course, is baked into our economy today is significantly higher prices for everything everyday Americans have to afford. Whether it's housing, you're buying a house or renting a house. Whether it's groceries, you're making decisions in the line about what can you keep in your basket, or gas, energy for your homes. But those prices are fixed into, and they're significantly higher than they were just 4 years ago.
But not all the blame goes to obviously the Biden administration. It's a global issue following the pandemic. Some of the energy things, I would grant you that some of those executive orders haven't helped.
I'd encourage us to look back at the first decision that Joe Biden made, which was to pass a $1.9 trillion spending package with only called a COVID relief package, only 1% for vaccines, less than 10% for COVID-related health. The $1.7 trillion went to fueling the type of economy and inflation that we have today, which led to a 9% inflation, I think it was June or July in 2021. We haven't recovered from that because Joe Biden doesn't have a clue on how to fix this economy. He thinks that government is the answer. We know that the free markets and capitalism is actually the answer to creating jobs, not the government.
Will you press Chairman Powell on just getting in the weeds here on Basel III and in the end game proposal? What are you getting anywhere with him?
Yeah, I think we have made significant progress over the last several months on Basel III endgame. The bottom line is simply this: parking more capital on the sidelines makes it even more difficult in a challenging environment to have your first-time home buyers have access to capital, for small businesses to start their businesses. So having that conversation about a re-proposal, I'm encouraged by the signs that we're seeing that there's a strong possibility that we're going to see a re-proposal put back to the market, having an open period of comment once again. I hope they take their time and get this right. This is a significant impact on the health of our economy. And if Jay Powell and the other powers that be are wise, they will take the time to hear from the public, the stakeholders, and then recalibrate even that approach in this final proposal that goes through the APA.
Senator Scott, I appreciate the awareness of what the average American is going through in terms of dealing with inflation and having to make really hard choices. But there are certain things that are sort of built into the economy at this point and are being proposed that are inflationary in and of itself. Nearshoring is increasing costs of goods or will increase costs of goods. And the tariffs that President Trump is proposing, 60% on Chinese imports, 10% on all U.S. imports. I mean, while these are proposals and may never actually come to fruition, that's the direction that President Trump would like to go in. Those tariffs would be inflationary as well. How do you reconcile wanting to reduce inflation, ease the burden on average Americans, but also being in the party that is proposing all these tariffs, which would add costs to consumers?
Well, let's not forget the fact that while President Trump did a very good job of pushing back on China, what President Biden has done is kept those same tariffs in place. So the question and conversation around tariffs is one that bleeds into this administration. The real question we should ask is, can we have a fair process of trade while being a free trade nation? I think the answer is yes. How do you do that? You do that by pushing back on those bad actors around the globe that continue to manipulate, whether it's their currency, whether it's stealing our IP. We need to make sure that we have in place the kind of headwinds that makes it more difficult for countries like China to lie, cheat, and steal. I think that is what President Trump has done. And frankly, it's one of the reasons why President Biden has not eliminated tariffs.
Senator, we alluded to when I said, I don't know, actually I was talking to Kyle Bass about it. I said, he said the incumbents have been getting voted out in the UK, France, et cetera, and it could happen here. And I go, well, which incumbent are we talking about getting voted out here? Do you know which incumbent that you're trying to get voted out in the United States? You know who that incumbent is?
Well, we know that the Democrats, they are in a hot mess, as we say it back in South Carolina right now. There's no doubt. But listen, it doesn't matter what they call the person, whether it's Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. The bottom line is it's the incompetence of this administration, not Joe Biden's mental acuity, that is in question.
Do you have a preference? Do you have a preference
I don't.
of who to face?
They have to solve the multi-100 million plus problem by replacing Joe Biden. Frankly, I think the American people and the day of reckoning is coming on November the 5th. I don't care whether it's Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. They both have been the same powers that be that's led to a wide open southern border, leading to 10 million illegal immigrants coming into our country. They've led to the highest inflation since the Jimmy Carter years. And frankly, crime in the neighborhoods that I grew up in, poor inner city neighborhoods, has never been worse, at least in my lifetime.